A port city on the shores of Lake Victoria, Kisumu is the largest city in western Kenya. Its social, political and economic significance has made it a key player in Kenya's pre- and post-independent history. It's also home to Father John Pesa, founder of the Holy Ghost Coptic Church of Africa and a self-proclaimed healer of the mentally ill. Father John Pesa's Sunday service is well underway for a congregation of the faithful and his patients. It is a smaller crowd than usual due to pandemic regulations, he tells us. Even so, it is clear the cleric enjoys a loyal and abiding following.
How many people love me?
Father Pesa's reputation precedes him. He's been healing the sick since 1961, he claims, but no stranger to controversy. Father Pesa's methods and practice, including chaining his patients, have earned him fierce criticism.
Imagine you are alone dealing with 5 unstable people. What would you do? And yet some have the wandering disease, where they just move around aimlessly. If you leave that person, they might just wander off. What if a person gets hit by a car? What will you tell the family that put this patient under your care? So we chain them.
Unexpectedly, Pesa conducts a seemingly staged demonstration of how his healing works.
He is going into a trance. His mind is resting. I'm the one who produces his spiritual power. It's the power that is doing this. That is the power of God that heals people at Coptic Church. God is the only one who knows what he does and how it heals. It is a natural factor beyond my human knowledge. Even I don't know.
Natural factor beyond human knowledge.
Whenever I touch someone and they fall into a trance, gradually they begin to change. That change is what shows me the person is healed.
A short drive from Pesa's church brings us to Maseno University, where we meet Professor Otieno Omolo. The retired physician turned lecturer was among Kenya's first cohort of child psychiatrists and once led the country's only psychiatric hospital. His disregard for Father Pesa is evident.
That is somebody who is completely ignorant of whatever he's doing. And most of the things you are talking about, I'm aware of them. People being chained and all, those are criminal activities. And it is unfortunate that the judicial arm or the executive arm is not taking action against that.
The judicial arm has tried. Last year, a court ordered Pesa to pay damages of up to $5,000 for violating a young man's freedom of movement and right to education. But the courts can do little when patients are voluntarily placed in the cleric's care by their own relatives. A former patient's unshakable trust in Father Pesa and his methods is evidence of that.
Yes, at one time when I was like somehow becoming violent, then I was also chained. Yes, but that is just to control those who may be violent. You see, some of these illnesses, they may not be treated fully in our hospitals or medically. So that's why prayers are also important. And faith healing is very real and it works.
In many cases, faith healers operate in a grey area, not formally regulated either by the church or government, and this is where abuses can take place. In 2020, a Human Rights Watch report revealed how men, women and children with psychosocial disabilities are chained or locked in confined spaces in 60 countries across Asia, Africa, Europe, the Middle East and the Americas. Professor Omolo suggests the formalization of spiritual counseling would help eliminate abuses. After all, spirituality can contribute to an individual's healing.
Now, as a scientist, as a medic, of course, I don't think prayers would help anybody as such directly. However, I'm very much aware of spirituality. I'm very much aware of the fact that when you are talking of quality of life, which of course is both physical and mental, isn't it? The issue of the spiritual domain is important. People who have strong faith or who believe in something generally tend to have a better outcome than somebody who just has no belief in anything. Because it gives us, most times spirituality gives us some sort of a direction.
The influence of the spiritual domain gives legitimacy to alternative healing practices, especially on a continent where clinical mental health services are scarce. In Africa, the number of psychiatrists per 100,000 people ranges from 0.01 in Burundi, 0.2 here in Kenya, and 2.4 in Mauritius. But this is a far cry from high-income countries with an average of 9 psychiatrists per 100,000 people. The leading causes of mental illness in Africa include poverty, war and conflict, insufficient resources, and living with other diseases such as HIV/AIDS or cancer. The coronavirus pandemic has raised levels of stress and trauma globally, making the situation even more dire. A 2016 UN report identified depression, anxiety, schizophrenia, and bipolar disorder as the most common mental illnesses in Africa. But often, lack of awareness renders these disorders invisible until sufferers display severe and dramatic symptoms. To make matters worse, Africa has insufficient outpatient facilities and hospital beds for patients with mental illnesses. This means that the proportion of Africans who go untreated ranges from 75% in South Africa to 90% in Ethiopia and Nigeria. This is known as the treatment gap. In South Africa, the treatment gap is sometimes filled by traditional healers known as sangomas, who diagnose and heal through divination, herbal medicine, and rituals. The ability to heal is considered a gift or a calling bestowed by one's ancestors that must then be honed and developed through guided training. Sangomas claim to treat physical, spiritual, and mental disorders.
We give them some things to smoke and medicines to drink, but it depends on what's disturbing them. Sometimes it's because they have a spiritual calling, or they're dealing with bad spirits.
Where traditional treatments might not work, Gogo Shabalala refers her patients to medical doctors.
We work together with doctors. We respect each other's gifts. You have gifts and I have mine.
Unethical healers have been known to take advantage of people's beliefs.
Some people use a gift for the wrong things. They go to school to become a traditional healer, but don't actually stay the course. They don't finish. Ultimately, a sangoma is a healer, not a killer.
There is a shift emerging in the policy response to mental health in parts of Africa. In 2020, Kenya became the first country on the continent to appoint a task force and a presidential advisor on mental health. This signaled a growing awareness of the scale of mental health problems.
In 2019, the government recognized the need to really look at mental health in its totality in our country against the background of the fact that depression was going up, domestic violence was going up, suicides were going up, alcohol use disorders were going up. And our task force was asked to establish why. The task force went right through the country, talked to all manner of people in the private sector, in religion, armed forces, the government itself, and reported in July of last year. In fact, we have a huge problem with mental health in our country against a very small investment of finance and of human resources.
Dr. Njenga is also the chairperson of a chain of private mental health hospitals in Nairobi. For those who can afford it, the facilities treat psychiatric disorders in a safe and secure environment. The hospital's emphasis on dignity is reflected in the design, clinical approach and relationship with patients, all in an effort to produce the best outcomes and fight the stigma associated with mental illness.
The reason people stigmatized mental health before is because they were hopeless and helpless, and they felt that there's nothing we could do to help them. Now, as the dark night is coming to an end, people are realizing that actually the earlier you get care, the more likely that you get a good outcome out of it. And that, for me, is what will hit the biggest blow against stigma: knowledge, information, and good outcomes.
Awareness and destigmatization is also being driven by a new generation of mental health advocates, such as broadcast journalist Eugene Mweri.
I went into mental health as a whole because of my own personal story. So early in 2017, I was diagnosed with severe depression and anxiety. Unfortunately, that came after my first suicide attempt. Let me remind you that in Kenya, here we are, suicide is a criminal offense under the Constitution, which means you can get arrested for trying to take your own life. You can end up in a cell. Knowing that, I still went public with my own story. Nobody deserves to be at the point where they feel that you are so alone. I mean, you're deserving of nothing, and there's nothing left to tether you to this world. Nobody deserves to get to that point at all.
Through advocacy and establishing an emergency support network, Mweri is changing the narrative around mental health and connecting those in crisis with professionals. It's work he does not take lightly.
The generations that are coming are more emotionally aware, more in touch with their emotions than the generations before. So the idea of talking things out needs to be encouraged now more than ever.
More needs to be done for mental health in Africa, but there is hope.
As a person who lives with a mental health condition and psychosocial disability,
Young people across the continent are bringing the conversation on mental wellness to the fore.
Learn about mental health, share with your friends so we can have...
Alongside the work of experts, ethical healers and medical practitioners, mental health policy and practice may well change for the better. Lindy Mtongana, CGTN, Nairobi, Kenya.